Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's IRA and annuity training for real estate agents. I am pleased to introduce Gary Garrison as our instructor today. For those of you that don't already know Gary, although most of you do, sorry, I had to click somebody in. He is a man of many talents. He is not only a real estate broker and has served as a compliance broker for 3 states, and he's also served as a real estate agents to buyers and sellers for years, and he's always very helpful with all the agents. He was a senior level IT consultant for over 20 years before becoming a full-time realtor, which he has now been for over, let's see, how many years has it been, Gary?
Actually early 2009, so 14 years.
14 years, okay. He's also a wealth manager, helping individuals and businesses prepare for a more financially secure future. For Gary, he's just always been driven to learn, to better himself, and he's always been grateful for the opportunity to help others, which is what he has learned and what he does every single week of his life. So with the right help, a secure and strong financial future is possible. And today he will be sharing important concepts that can be used to achieve that goal. So without further ado, Gary, take it away.
Thank you very much, Cindy. I really appreciate the intro, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending today. As Cindy mentioned, I've done a lot of things in my lifetime. All of it has been really in the name of service. I've been a consultant in one capacity or another, helping others. And it's something I've always enjoyed doing, and I've always sought out those areas where I could be most helpful. And this is one that's near and dear to my heart. I started this over 4 years ago, sort of expanding my business offerings because of how important this is. And not only was it to me, but everybody that I come across has run into the same issues. And so I hope that you'll find the information that I shared with you today helpful, and just know that I'll be available if you have any questions. I'm the founder of Financial Glee. It's a silly name. It's intentional. I think you need to have a sense of humor. Just know that although it's a silly name, it's a serious mission. I consider and I can be called lots of different things, most of them good, but I consider myself a retirement income specialist because that's really why I got into this field in the first place. All of the reports out there about Americans not having, we're not talking just a few Americans, but over 50% of Americans not having enough money for their retirement and not being able to retire, which is scary to read that on a regular basis, and to know that the struggles that I went through on my own, the trust that I'd put in others to help me kind of get to where I needed to be, and I realized in the end it all fell on me anyways. So I specifically got into this field to help resolve those issues, to find the solutions that for whatever reason other folks weren't talking about or making available, that we needed to know that's available. My goal is to make sure that your money stays your money, which is going to be vastly different than what you'll find most elsewhere. And as Cindy mentioned, I've been a consultant. I started out in the IT field many years ago, sort of being able to take those same skill sets, which was really complex problem solving and solution design. I was always at the expert's expert, if you will, not to pat myself on the back, but that was the level that I elevated to. If the experts couldn't figure it out, I was the person that they would call for help. And it's because I love being able to think outside the box, look for different solutions, and be able to help specifically to solve problems. And with that in mind, I decided to stay independent or remain independent with my financial services offerings because I didn't want to be tied to someone else's suite of products and services. I wanted to be able to actually go out and find what will work, as opposed to being told, here's what you can make available to your clients. And as part of that, I've got a $8 billion plus set of resources accessible throughout the United States, which is great because as much as I know, and I spend every single day working on this, learning and working with clients, I know I don't know it all. And so you have to have access to resources. I've got multiple teams on the East Coast and the West Coast and in between that I can always call on for, additional set of eyes if need be, make sure that nothing's being overlooked. All for a unique service. My goals are always when working with my clients to help them find a better way to eliminate their money worries, protect against the unexpected, certainly like last year, 20% losses in the stock market, help them rebuild and grow their retirement money, establish guaranteed retirement income stream, and you'll learn a little bit more about why that's so important. Just a few minutes, be able to retire and maintain their desired lifestyle, as opposed to having to really dial back their desired lifestyle because of the limited resources that they may have available, or the worries that they'll blow through those resources, and to be able to leave a legacy that they can be proud of, all for a better life both before and during their retirement years. So I go through this, I do these as seminars and webinars, and it's always going to be the same. For me, it's going to be impactful information, strategies that I hope will be life-changing. There's no gimmicks or get-rich-quick schemes in here. They're truly concepts and solutions and strategies that are used on a regular basis, tailored to everybody's individual needs for success. And I'll finish within our allotted time, and I'll be happy to set up times to meet with you afterwards if you have any questions or would like some additional help just taking a look at what you've got. With that said, typically if we were doing this in person, I'd have a folder for you. So you have a response sheet. If you could do me a favor, just keep an eye out for this. For those of you that attended today, I'll send out an email. If you don't see it in your inbox first thing in the morning tomorrow, check your spam folder for me. If you do me a favor, fill this out, get it back to me. I recommend checking at least that second checkbox for a personalized retirement income report, which is very relevant to what we're discussing today. It's all complimentary. That'll be great. Once I get those back, I'll be happy to send you these other items: Annuity 101, an article on the Annuity Advantage, a sequence of returns risk, which a lot of folks overlook with their IRAs and IRA assets. And we'll talk about that briefly, but it's a great flyer that I'll have in there also. And of course, I'll share the presentation slides as well. So with that said, why are you here today? I know the easy answer is you're here to learn about annuities and IRAs, but does anybody want to speak up? And do you have a specific reason you're looking to, you're concerned about how to grow, how to protect? Any of those are particular interests that can sort of help shape this? And we got a quiet bunch. Okay, not a problem. I figure most folks are here because of not just the learning about the IRAs and the annuities, but they're wondering how can they use one or both to create wealth, to create some sort of more of a practical way of predicting growth in their products, in the money that they've earned over the years, and to be able to create enough income that they can rely on in their retirement years. And so thank you. We'll definitely go through all of those today. So I'll cover the attributes of IRAs and annuities, just so you can have kind of a quick idea as to what they are, but then I'll also talk about how they can be used, or how they're traditionally used for generating wealth, for creating that lifetime income, popular strategies to maximize their potential. And because we happen to be within tax season right now, I know many folks are curious as to what their deadlines are, what their limits may be for contributions for their to get ahead of their 2022 filings for this year. Also talk about required minimum distributions. There was a change to that policy, or those requirements that went into effect at the end of December. And I'll also talk about quickly inherited IRA changes, since again, but that too is a recent change. It's a little bit older. It went into effect back in 2020, but it's been impacting a lot of folks, especially with COVID, a lot of people passing unexpectedly, not realizing the impact that the new laws had on those. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to use the chat or speak up. I'll do what I can, to address anything that I see as it's, certainly when it pops up as part of it, or certainly by the time we get through the end, I'll be happy to answer questions then as well. All right, so while we're talking about, or getting ready to talk about IRAs and annuities, and the creating wealth and that income, one of the first questions we need to ask ourselves is how much do we need to save? This is a common question I get from my clients, is $500,000 enough? Is $1 million or $1.5 million enough to save, for my retirement? And it's always a very difficult question to answer. No matter what resource you use, you're going to get different answers. There's a lot of different factors. Your housing, your location, in particular, especially if DC metro area, is pretty costly. What activities, what kind of a lifestyle you're looking to maintain. You've got to look at other things like your income sources, how long you plan to work, where your income sources are when you're through with working. You have to consider inflation and the impact of taxes, and your health too. So there are a lot of different things to factor in there. Some of the more common scenarios or sort of guesses that I've seen out there are 6 times the value of your home, or 10 times your annual salary by the age of 67, assuming you're working through to your retirement age, 10 times your annual salary. The bottom line is that they really don't know. The key is that we just need to figure out the best we can to maximize what we do have, to get the most out of everything that we've been able to put away, all of our years of hard work, because we just don't know. It'd be great to say, down to the penny exactly how much we need, but because of all those variables, I just tell folks, the ideal here is really to amass as much as you can. If you don't need it, great. I'd rather have more and not need it, be able to pass it on to, my wife, my children, grandchildren, a charity, whatever, right? But I'd rather have too much and not need it than to not have enough and then need it. And of course, I'll need it at a time where I can't generate it, right? So you can see this is a big issue, and it's compounded by the fact that the average person in the US is only saving about 3 to 5% of their annual income towards their retirement. Now we'll talk about where that money is being saved, which actually makes this even worse. Your average highly compensated folks, it's $100,000 or more in income annually, only saving about 9 to 12%. But what they've found is when you look at the numbers, if we work, 40 years, 40, 50 years, many of us are still going to need our savings to last another 30, 40 years of not working. So you can see we need to be in that 30 to 35% range, and most of us aren't going to be there. So we need to figure out how to maximize what we've got. So if you take a look at the retirement plan construct, certainly as it was not too long ago, our retirement income were tied to several different factors. The first here being a corporate pension plan. Now, pension is really just another word for guaranteed income. So you had, whether it be a monthly, quarterly, annually, but through working through your corporation, through any sponsoring that they did, contributions that they made, contributions that you made over the years, it would build up. You would have a guaranteed income source for life, which would be great. Add to that Social Security, which is another pension. It's a government pension. So this is another, or entitlement. So this is another one where, again, we've contributed to it as workers. We contribute into the Social Security program, and then the government over the years figures out a number for us based on longevity, what they anticipate. And again, it's another guaranteed monthly income for us. Now, with 2 pensions, we're not looking so bad. One of the issues that we have with Social Security is, at best, the most it's going to cover for us is 40% of our income needs, which means we've got to offer this other pension and anything else we have, we need to be able to make up at least 60%, if not more. So then they added back in the day, the IRA concept, or your tax deferred, your defined contribution plans. Most folks will think of the 401k is probably the most common example that folks will think of. So this is a high risk, high reward, because these plans, although they're great, they force you to save. The negative side of it is that they force you to save into vehicles where your money is at risk. So you invest in stocks, you invest in mutual funds, typically, because if you have a cash account, it's not going to really make any money. So you're investing in things that, yes, they could grow, and your hope is that they will grow. You put the money in for 30, 40 years, you hope that you'll get the money out of it. The problem is that you could also lose it all. So this was fine back in the day when we had 2 guaranteed income sources, so that if we did lose everything in a catastrophic market event, as an example, and 2008 wasn't far off from that, then you wouldn't go looking for the nearest bridge. You still had good substantial income. It wouldn't be devastating. Unfortunately, after these plans came to be, corporations decided it was just way too expensive for them to maintain or to keep offering pension plans. They didn't like the liability, because oftentimes their pension money was actually invested in at-risk products, mutual fund stocks, things like that. So if the pension fund collapsed, then there was legal liability. So what they decided to do instead is get rid of it. And so this is why, if you're seeing all those reports out there, 50% of Americans or more not having enough savings, and many of them don't believe they'll even be able to retire because of it. This is why. We're now down to one guaranteed income pension system, where it's guaranteed to cover no more than 40% of our income needs. It's not counting other expenses, it's just our income needs. And a defined contribution plan, which was never meant to be a primary resource for us. If it makes a lot of money, great. That's what we all hope for. But if it doesn't, and historically it doesn't, right? It's got periods every 10 years, there's at least 3 down years, 3 recovery years. So you've got at least 4 good years you're hoping for out of every 10-year period. You're struggling to make up that 60% plus for that Social Security. So let's talk about the IRA attributes, because as I mentioned, that defined contribution plans, your 401ks, those your IRAs are your tax advantaged long-term savings accounts funded with earned income. So by tax advantages, these are pre-tax plans that you put money in today, you don't pay taxes on it today, but you can use that money to actually purchase a number of different investment assets. So an IRA is really just kind of it's an account of sorts where you can hold other investment assets inside of them. Now, depending on the account and the plan administrator, there's going to be a lot of restrictions as to which mutual funds you could potentially invest in, what options or flexibility do you have to invest in other areas like stocks and things like that, precious metals, all that good stuff. Your annual contribution limits are established by law. So say you're in a high earning position, you could max out your IRA contributions pretty quickly. But also too, being a high income earner, you're going to have higher income needs in your retirement years. So what do you do with that? What do where can you maximize the rest of that money? And they also have limited access to funds because they're pre-tax, right? That means anything that you take out beforehand, before 59 and a half, not only is going to be subject to regular income tax, but it's going to be subject to a 10% penalty as well. So again, it's meant to be a long-term savings account, not to be something that you dip into on a regular basis. So you've got limited access to funds, and the restrictions on the use are set by laws and your plan administrator. So there are some hardship items that you could potentially qualify for. You could take money out of your IRA for a first-time home purchase. There are a couple areas where you can get access to that money penalty-free, but by and large, it's good. Your use of that money and access to it's going to be restricted. So what are the common IRAs? I think most folks, as I mentioned, will think of, say, 401k when you mention an IRA. So that's going to be your employer-sponsored plan, and your traditional plans, but your employer-sponsored, I think what most folks think of. Again, these are pre-tax contribution plans. They grow tax-deferred, but it's wholly taxable when you use it. So the trade-off is that, yes, you can save on your taxes today, And there may be an advantage to that, depending on where you are within your tax bracket. You may need a vehicle where you can offload some of that money and not pay taxes on it today. But you're signing up then to pay taxes on it at some point in the future, and taxes on the growth at some point in the future. As I mentioned, if you get access to that money before you're 59 and a half, you've got a 10% penalty on top of the income tax tied to that. And they also have what's known as a required minimum distribution, or an RMD, attached to it by the federal government as well. And what this really is a requirement by the government for you to start drawing down that money and using it so you can pay taxes on it. So again, it's meant to be a long-term savings vehicle. It was never meant to be your primary retirement source. And because it's a long-term vehicle, the government's doing a trade-off. Hey, if you don't pay taxes on it today, we're just going to need those taxes because the government needs taxes to run. So we're going to require you to start taking down those taxes, start taking out that money and then paying taxes on it if you haven't already started doing that yourself. Again, typically that's going to be your employer sponsored or your traditional IRAs, your 401ks, your thrift saving plan, etc. Now these three here on the end, your SEP, your simple, and your solo 401k, these are actually very applicable to real estate agents, because as a self-employed individual, as a small business owner, you have access potentially to where you could sponsor your own IRA. It's a pre-tax contribution plan. Each has their own different benefits or limits to it. So great question about the RMD, Cheryl. If that's okay with you, I'm going to talk about RMDs. I've got a section at the end because that has changed. It's a great question. I'll talk about that in a little bit, if that's okay. Rollover IRAs, now these are also very common. Maintains the tax status of the funds that were moved. So if you were moving money from your 401k or your TSP or one of these other plans, you can move it over into another like category fund, if you will. And so an IRA. And what it does is, based on where that money came from, it will maintain its tax status. So you can move it from a SEP to a SEP, or say a 401k into a traditional IRA, for instance, and it would maintain that pre-tax contribution, limits and everything else attached to that. You also have your Roths. I get a lot of questions about Roths. These are great options for folks. And like everything, there's going to be pros and cons. So whether or not it's a good idea for you or not, it's all going to be on an individual basis. But these are funded by post-tax contributions. So money that you've earned, you've already paid taxes on, you can put into an IRA, a Roth protected IRA or categorized IRA, so that it can grow tax deferred. So you only be, think of it this way: if you're to put it into another product, say more of a like another product like an annuity, which we'll talk about later, that you're used after tax dollars for, you'd only be paying on the growth anyways. So depending on how long you've given it to grow, it could be very minimal tax obligations. So a Roth is good if you want to be able to put money away you've already paid taxes on and allow it to grow, so that when you do use it in the future, you don't have to worry about paying taxes on the growth. It can also be subject to the 10% penalty on the withdrawals if under 59 and a half. Now that's going to be on the earnings or the growth. So you can certainly take out your own money before then that you put into it. But if you were to actually access any of the earnings or growth, then that would be taxable if you do that, and potentially subject to the 10% penalty. Now, Roths are protected from RMD, so that's another upside to that. Again, you put after-tax dollars into it to begin with, so it would only be the growth. And I think that's probably why they're RMD protected, because you'll notice that your employer-sponsored plans, your traditional IRAs, which are all pre-tax funded, it's a lot easier to do the math on the entire account value than it is to figure out what portion of the account is strictly subject to the RMD portion. All right, annuity attributes. And so this is something that I think you'll find very interesting. So an annuity is a tax advantage life insurance product or contract designed specifically to provide guaranteed lifetime income options. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we're missing that one leg to our table, right? That other pension leg that we were counting on. This is that way to get that pension back. Excuse me, they're specifically designed for that purpose. And they've got a wide variety of options. You could get immediate income. You can have income short-term, mid-term, long-term, whatever your needs are. They've got a variety of different products, and they all receive the same tax advantages that are protected underneath the IRS guidelines. Now, there's a lot of bad press out there about annuities, and the reason is there's a number of different reasons. One of the big reasons is that they tend to get confused because there are really two types of annuities. You have a variable annuity and you have a fixed annuity. So I always like to joke with folks, when you hear variable, think bad. Variable is bad, fixed is good. If you're going to work with any of the big companies that are out there, the only product they'll introduce you to is a variable annuity. And there are lots of different reasons why. The biggest is because they can actually make money off the assets. They can make money off the transactions because they're going to require you to work with their mutual fund. So as they look to rebalance your account, every time they rebalance it, there's a fee. And sadly, most of the, second most of the requests I get to help move and save or retirement savings is because they've been put in variable products. They didn't know it at the time. Years later, they have not grown. In fact, many of them have lost value and they're at a loss. So variable, that's why variables are bad. And so if you think of an annuity, you hear annuities are bad, variable annuities are bad. It's not that they're bad. They're just like any other security type of a product. They can gain money, they can lose money. Whereas a fixed annuity cannot lose money due to market performance. And a fixed index annuity can actually participate in market gains without those losses, which is why when you hear fixed, think good. So protected from market losses, can participate in market gains and no fee options. And I just helped a client recently, actually was a real estate agent that had rolled over 401k into a big company brand annuity product, or it was an IRA. What they didn't realize, the IRA was a variable annuity because they had maintained the tax status. So what they didn't realize was a variable annuity, but they were devastated when 10 years later it was actually worth less than it was when they'd rolled it over. And now they were only 10 years away from retirement. So they were devastated. So just, variable annuities, just most, if you're going to get negative press on them, it's going to be the variable annuities. As I mentioned, tax status. So what's great about annuities is that they can be both pre-qualified or pre-tax products, and they can be after-tax products. So they give you a lot of different ranges, and it can be used in a lot of different areas. If it's qualified, simply means it's qualified to be taxed. So it's a pre-tax product. Non-qualified means only the gains are taxable. So your qualifieds are typically, if you're going to roll over money from an IRA, likely you rolled it over into a qualified annuity product. You'll get those protections, you'll get the growth, and it maintains the tax status. For non-qualifieds are used for their individual growth IRAs for themselves, and also very commonly used for Roth IRAs, because again, Roths are after-tax investments. But you can actually invest in an annuity as a Roth with the Roth protection. So its growth can be, you don't have to pay taxes on it if you use it properly in the future. Annuities have much easier access to the funds. And where I mentioned before, for an IRA is kind of that bucket, if you will, that can hold your assets. An annuity is an asset. So that's why the big difference between the two. So when you hear annuity and you hear IRA and you hear annuity, you're going to want to think that they are different animals. An IRA can hold assets, an annuity is an asset. Some of the more common annuities for individuals, you've got your traditional, your non-qualified annuities. It's immediate, multi-year, guaranteed. So those are kind of a ramp up of, say, a bank CD. Your multi-year guaranteed annuities are far better products. Single premium, if you roll those over, you could use single premium, or say from a purchase, or you get cash from somewhere, you sold something, you could use that. Flexible premiums can continue to contribute to those and continue to contribute to its growth. And also asset-based annuities, which are often used for, say, elder care savings in the event that they may need some maybe maximize some of their savings in the future. Roth for your non-qualifieds are very common, and your rollovers can be qualified and non-qualified. More often they're going to be qualified. So if it's coming from your 401k, your TSP, 403b account, you'll know what those are from either a previous employer or even a current employer. There's an in-service option to be able to roll over some or all of your funds from those accounts, and they would go into, say, a rollover annuity. For businesses, for real estate agents, you've got your simplified employee pension, which they can be used for. They're great for that, as well as your savings incentive match plan for employees, otherwise known as your SEP and your simple IRA. So they'll have an IRA status. So those are pre-tax contribution plans in accordance to the IRS rules, but they'll actually be annuities. So you'll have the benefits of the annuities with those. So when you take a look at your retirement income overview, you're really looking at two different buckets, if you will, or two different categories. Your IRA, basically your employer or traditional, your rollovers and your Roths are going to be your more common types, and they hold assets. Now, your annuity is an asset. They've got different types of annuities. So many of your IRAs can hold annuity assets among other assets, stocks, mutual funds, whatever, bonds. Oftentimes they can, but if they can't, you can create an annuity as an IRA, as I mentioned, based on the tax advantages. So when you think of IRA, you want to think of, and I just thought this was kind of a fun little picture of a toolbox. This is where, you'll hold all the tools in there that you're looking to be able to utilize at some point in the future for your retirement. Whereas an annuity, you're going to want to think of as a specific tool. You're using an annuity to solve a specific problem or need. In this case here, it could be that pension. It could be a number of other, it could be, elder care savings, whatever. It could be a lot of different uses, but an annuity is going to be a specific tool. Just like, stocks investment, mutual funds investments, where an IRA is going to be your say toolbox to hold those tools. So IRAs and wealth building, traditionally used for high growth objectives. So this is for savings traditionally. So you want to try to amass as much as possible. This is at high risk, high reward, as I mentioned. So these are why they were never really meant to be, especially your 401ks, were never meant to be your primary investment vehicle. They could lose money, but they can also make money. So it depends on what your risk tolerance is. So your employer sponsored plans funded using regular contributions, payroll deductions. They can also have matches potentially with those. But again, these are high risk, high reward. You're getting tax savings today, with the exception of your Roths IRAs, plus tax deferred compound growth. So that's, you're signing up to be able to pay taxes on the future for tax savings today. With IRAs, portfolio diversification is going to be really important. Now, it's going to be important anyways, but when you have an IRA, there's a lot of hands-on. Oftentimes with your IRA, to make sure the allocations are in line with your risk tolerance, or you're someone that's willing to risk it all to make to make a lot of money. You don't care if you lose it all, or are you sliding over more to the, hey, I don't really want to lose what I've got, but I would love to see some earnings. So it requires a lot of hands-on. So whether you're doing that yourself or you're going to have a plan administrator do that for you, there's the diversification is going to be really key to try to minimize those risks and try to protect your assets. Oftentimes requires a lot more work than folks are really interested in doing themselves. So having a professional do that for you is where most folks will rely on those types of services. They come at a cost. There's a fee for those, and those fees will be charged whether your account grows or not. So you just want to keep that in mind, and that's why it's got to be part of your planning process. When it comes to IRAs and income, think of your IRA as a bucket of holding a bunch of different assets, right? Excuse me. So the idea, especially with diversification, is not just trying to protect your money, but to try to create some additional income sources sources for you. Most often, what will happen is that you amass a certain amount that's available to you. Now you need to get access to that money. So as you pull down that money is gone, right? So you're actually doing some sort of strategic withdrawal to draw down your funds in a way that makes the most sense. You want to have a plan for what you draw down, what you sell, or take money out of first, right? And as you exhaust those funds, you kind of work down your chart of your investments, so that you're doing it in the most economic way, right? Economical way. They're vulnerable to multiple risk categories, including market risk. So if you're in your retirement years and you're starting now to draw down on the assets that you've saved up and you've built up in your IRAs, what if we have another year like we had last year, 20% losses? All of a sudden you're $500,000, in savings that you were going to try to count on for the next 20 years is, now what, 20% of that's what, 400,000, right? So, now you're down to 400,000, you're still drawing on that money. So that's always a risk with your IRAs. And also too, sequence of returns risk. And that was something that I did mention earlier at the beginning, and I'll be happy to provide a scenario, when you email me your response forms, I'll be able to get those out to you. But you can have two individuals with the same investment results at the end of 20 years. But if they were drawing down on that money, it really depends on when those results started to happen. That could have a dramatic impact as to how long that money lasts. So IRAs and income, you're looking at a lot of different options, dividends, interest, and you end up drawing those down or selling those in order to get access to those funds. Dividends, hopefully you keep those, enough dividends will come in, but oftentimes you'll end up draining those out as well over time. I do have here that IRAs can oftentimes hold an annuity. A lot of folks don't understand that and don't realize that. So always check with your IRA plan administrator to see if it can, and specifically if they can hold a fixed annuity. If not, you can always look to have a fixed annuity separate. The assets on withdrawn and vulnerable. And when I talk about vulnerability, it's real. If you just take a look at this historic chart for the S&P 500, you'll see that all that red is bad. Those are down years. You'll even see there's a few green years in there that really aren't very green, right? So typically, we've seen certainly over the last couple of decades, every 10 years, we have at least 3 down years. If you're in your 20s, probably not as big a deal. You think you've got time to recover, but what if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, right? Can you really take the time to recover just to get back to where you were? And they go against sound investment advice. And I'm sure most of you have seen this. Rule number 1 is you never lose money. So why are we being directed towards these IRAs where they go out of their way to make sure we're comfortable with the idea that we could actually lose all of our money? And rule number 2 is you never forget rule number 1. And this is an old Warren Buffett quote from way back. So you always want to make sure you're getting the most out of your money. You're balancing your risk in order to achieve your goals. And a big part of that's going to be ensuring that you're resolving that extra pension option that's missing, as well as locking in or preserving any of your savings as part of it down the road. When you're looking at annuities and wealth building, there are a lot of different designs for different growth and income needs, which make these great products. And again, I'm specifically referring to fixed annuities. Variable annuities have a lot of configurability to them as well. But as I mentioned earlier, my focus is on making sure your money stays your money. I don't deal with variable annuities. They're simple to implement, maintain. You pick a couple of different strategies, indexes if you want, or fixed accounts if you want, depending on the product. Some of them yield returns, income right away. Others have guaranteed growth over a specified period of time. So whatever it is, right, they're easy to maintain. You're not watching them daily. It's not monitoring it, and making changes regularly. That you get to participate in the gains, but you don't have to experience any of the market losses. And we'll take a look at that real quick as to what that looks like. Guaranteed interest options available, as I mentioned. Tax savings today on your pre-tax annuities, plus tax-deferred compound growth. Now, you also have your after-tax products, which means you're only worried about the tax-free compound growth. And the market's always responding. So they've got some great products today because of the 20% losses, which is a huge hit to a lot of folks' IRAs, money that they're counting on their retirement years, where you can actually receive bonuses, not just an initial bonus on your premium, but also annual bonuses as well to help recover and guarantee that your money can double in over, in a minimum of 10 years, regardless of how the market performs. And so there are a lot of great products out there. It's just a matter of lining up which one best suits your needs. From an income standpoint, as I mentioned, annuities are designed specifically for that guaranteed lifetime income. There are a lot of different designs. You can get it immediately. You can have a defined period. Say, I want just 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. I want guaranteed access to my money. You can even do a combination, defined period plus lifetime. Hey, I want 20 years, but if I live longer, I want to make sure I keep getting my money. And or just lifetime benefits, and all of those result in different calculations. You even have products with cost of living adjustments available to them, so they can help ease any inflationary concerns. Easily accessible if you need it in early years. Many of the products offer 10% withdrawal options without any fees or impact, cost-wise to use. And once you get past that initial period, then it's unlimited at that point. Accelerated benefit riders, say if you're diagnosed with a terminal illness or home care needs, you get access to that money even in the early years, penalty-free. If there are required minimum distribution friendly provisions, so that say you're using your annuity and you want it just to be a growth product, accessible for your retirement years, or you'd be able to pass on to your children later on once you hit your retirement age for RMDs. Then and the RMDs exceed, say, your 10% value, whatever it would be in those early years, right? Then there's no penalty. They recognize there's nothing you can do about it. You've got zero cost annuities out there, and others you can add additional features such as an income doubler. So whatever your income could be, be a rider, be a fee for that rider for the period that you have it, but it could double then what you would get typically when you turn on that annuity for your income. Taxation can be limited to only the growth by using post-tax products. And if you use a post-tax product as a Roth IRA, then as long as you use the IRA within the Roth guidelines properly, then you won't even have to pay taxes on the growth. And it's important because not losing money is far better than waiting for that money to recover. So I'll take a quick look at what that looks like. I get a lot of folks that have questions when it comes to how can the insurance companies, remember these are the financial insurance companies, not your property casualty companies, which are much different. So if you take a look here, we've got a cap of 12.5% in this particular example. Two investors, one has a fixed index annuity, the other has an IRA invested in S&P 500 index. 12.5% cap simply means if the S&P 500 goes above 12.5%, the most this could grow would be 12.5%. And because we've got 100% participation, that means we get the full 12.5%. It could be less and it could be higher. They do fluctuate. The other thing here to really note is this 0% floor. So 0% floor is key because that means no matter what, you won't lose any money. And so each year, if it grows, it's a reset. So it locks and resets at that year. So never go below its growth, and you'll never go below zero in a bad year. So we'll take a look at both individuals starting at $300,000 in value. Talk about a real example here. 2007, the stock market, S&P 500 ended at 4%. Both accounts are now at 312. The difference, though, was 2008, and I think we all, most of us lived through 2008. I know my retirement account was devastated. My 401k was just practically wiped out, and you can see why. 39% drop. That IRA is now only worth $390, but because of the 0% floor feature in your fixed index annuity, the value is still at 312. So we take a look at the next year. We had a huge gain in the stock market in 2009. 27%, but you can see the value is now only up to 241, still far below where it was just 2 years earlier. Now the FIA only was able to utilize 12.5% of that growth, but still it's at 351. It's still $110,000 higher. Which carries through another year. We're looking at 11% in 2010. Now we've recovered 38% of the 39, but you'll notice it's still nowhere close to where it was. And the reason is every 20% of value that the security product loses, it needs to recover 25% just to get back to even. So because it lost almost 40%, it needs to rebound 50%, almost 50% just to get back to the 312. So here we are now, 1, 2, 3 years later, we're still, $44,000 below where we were 3 years earlier. What if we needed any access to our money during these years? What if we were drawing out money and as a part of our retirement during these years? It'd be devastating. I don't know about you, but I'd be happy at the 389, right? So I always like to play devil's advocate. We can always get, myself, I'm a problem solver. I like to think, well, what if? So what if the stock market, rebounded during this period, but we were capped at 7%. So instead of 389, we'd be at 357. I don't know about you guys, but I'd still be okay with that. Traditionally, your FIAs and your FIULs, which we're not going to really talk about today, this is how they operate. They operate the same. They tend to be in the 7 to 8% historically. So not unrealistic to be 7%. So 357, not bad. You're still about 90,000, higher than you would have been. What happens at 5%? A much more conservative rate, 343. You can see the real power of simply not losing money. And so that's why you would look at these at this particular product as that pension leg for you. It preserves your gains, it protects it from losses, and it's designed specifically to provide a lifetime income, which is that missing leg. Any money that you want to count on or need to depend on in your retirement years, this is what you want to do with it, right? To make it take advantage of that sound investment advice. Never lose money. You don't forget it, that rule number 1. Anything that you're willing to lose, right? It's not, a lot of folks are gamblers or, always, hoping or praying, the what if, right? What if I could strike it? Great. You just don't want the money in there that you can't lose. It's just like gambling, right? If you lost it, you'd be devastated looking for the nearest bridge, right? Then you shouldn't be doing it, right? So you want to make sure you've got a good balance between your risk. You're, higher risk, you'll have more money here, less money here. Lower risk, you'll have more money here, less money here. It's just part of good strategy development. IRAs and annuities working together. Many IRAs can hold annuity products, as I mentioned, so you just want to check with the plan administrator. Annuities can be classified independently as an IRA, so your rollovers are essentially considered an IRA for that because the money came from, say, a 401k or a TSP account. Now the plan admin, depending on where you rolled over from, and even from other annuities, you can roll it over from. Just want to make sure that you're aware of any potential fees that they may impose on those. Most of your IRAs, your 401ks, your employer-sponsored ones, there's no cost to roll them over. No fees on their side to roll them over. Definitely no fees on the insurance company side. But if you're rolling over from, say, another annuity, if the annuity is relatively new and there's a newer product you want to take advantage of, there could be surrender fees attached to that. So you just want to make sure you know what those are. Take it, and plan appropriately. Roths are great for utilizing the market protections and predictable growth. Your SEPs and simples are also great ways, and that's how they're categorized. You could have a SEP IRA, which is an annuity, or a simple IRA, which is an annuity for your pre-tax contributions. Strategies for maximizing. So diversified retirement plans consist of IRAs and annuities. Again, it's that balance of your riskier investments and your non-risk investments. Configured to be consistent with whatever your risk tolerances are. We use laddering as a great strategy depending on when you need income to help maximize what you have available to you. So, we can structure it so we can either have access to money right away, whether it be through, an annuity product, or our IRAs would kind of do a drawdown, and it's stagger when we have, let other money grow and yet be accessible when we need them at different periods in our retirement years. Strategic drawdown and strategic conversions, great for adding Roths and or your fixed index universal life insurance products. How can you add these tools? A lot of folks may have existing cash, at surplus somewhere, or if they're making payments into a plan now, they can simply reallocate those payments somewhere else into another product. For property sales, I work with a client that sold a home recently. She was already retired. She wanted to use a significant portion of her proceeds of the sale of the home to generate a lifetime income for her. And so we were able to take advantage of an immediate annuity product for her that exceeded her expectations. Stagnant money, if you've got money sitting somewhere that's really not earning anything at all, you want it to be doing something for you. And so there's, opportunities there potentially to sort of reallocate, move it from one investment to another. If you've got investments that are losing money and you want to stop the bleeding, if you will, it's a great resources. Your rollovers and transfers are very common. And in money for heirs, if you've got money set aside for your children, grandchildren, you can always use those, put those into these protected products if you want as well. There are contribution limits that we're talking about here. And for those guys, if you, like I said, get me your response sheets back and I'll get you the slide deck so you have these. So these are the limits that are set each and every year. Your SEPs give you a lot of room as a real estate agent, independent business owner. You could potentially put in up to $61,000 pre-tax for 2022. For 2023 up to 66 grand. For your traditional annuities, there are no limits. That's one advantage of the annuities over your IRAs, is that you've got no limits on the contributions. Your IRA contribution deadlines for 2022 is April 18th. If you're looking to make, say you don't have a SEP, but you want to create one, you've got funds for that, just give yourself up to 45 days to create and fund it, just to make sure you have it and can beat that deadline. So required minimum distributions. So the change is, there's a question to that earlier, it's going to be based on your age now. If you were born 1950 or earlier, your RMD starts at age 72. If you're already taking out RMDs, that will continue. If you're born 51 to 59, your RMD now starts at age 73. And if you're born 60 or later, your RMD will start at age 75. And just keep in mind, if you turn 72 at any point during 2022, you still have to take your RMD no later than April 1 of this year. Now, if it's your first RMD, if you haven't taken out in 2022, you wait to take it out by April 1, just know that you'll, typically have to take out another one before the end of this year. Inherited IRA changes. So real quick, just to wrap this up, if your non-spouses have to take out that money within 10 years and pay taxes on it. So you've got to be careful to develop a strategy to do that. Some of the owners of those are taking out the money now and putting them into other growth products for their children and grandchildren, so they don't have to deal with these. If you've inherited an IRA, I'm happy to help answer any questions you have and work with you to make sure you maximize what you can out of that money that's been left for you. Next step, if you have anything that's time sensitive, make sure you go ahead and reach out. I'll be happy to help. If you don't have help, answer any questions and get some of these things taken care of for you ahead of the deadlines. And then again, I certainly encourage you, it's complimentary, get a good assessment of where things are now for you and get an idea of any potential improvements you can make. Get that personalized free retirement income report. I analyze your income sources, all of your savings, things like that. It forces you to go through the exercise as well. Evaluate what's at risk, what's not at risk, and we'll balance it. And we'll take a look at solutions for you. So I think I got right on the dot there, Cindy. Any questions?
Cool beans. Are you going to send them that questionnaire?
Yeah, so I will, so once I have, I guess Cindy, you sent me everybody that's registered. So I don't know if you were able to capture who's
I did.
attended.
I sent you the updated one. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So I will, everybody that's attended, I'll send them the response sheet. They can get that back to me. And then I will send them all the information that they, that I promised with that, including the slides as well.
All righty. Well, thanks very much, Gary.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for the time. And thanks, Cindy, for the help. As always, I appreciate it.
All righty.
Have a great day.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.